Hello and welcome back to Coding with T. In today's tutorial, we're going to learn how to fetch the data of our brands table. We're going to fetch the data from the brands using repositories and we're going to display that data inside our data table. So first of all, let's quickly have a look what we're going to achieve. Our e-commerce settlement panel is running, and in the previous tutorials, we have covered in depth each and every step. So which is the categories. We learn how to load all of them and how to display them, how to search, sort. You can select one or multiple. You have the pagination, each and everything. And now in the brands, we're going to see that how we're going to load the brands in the table. And the brands has a connection with the categories, and to establish that connection we're also going to see that how we can create a connection between categories and brands. So let's say this is the brand of Acer, and which has two categories. So these laptops and electronics are the Acer part. These two categories are inside this brand. So same way we have many to many relationship, because one brand can go into multiple categories and also multiple categories can go into one brand. So if we talk about the categories, you can see electronics is over here and also electronics is over here and here. So this means that electronics has the brand Acer, Apple, Samsung, and the same way Acer has two categories, Adidas has four categories. So this means that it's a many to many relationship, and how we going to map that many to many relationship inside our Firestore database. Okay, so let's get started with today's tutorial. Okay, we're getting Flutter e-commerce admin panel, and you can see we are at the last section. And in today's tutorial and also in the upcoming tutorials, we're going to use the same topics that we have already covered in the previous 5 videos, and also we learn how to create abstract class, which we're going to now reuse in all the upcoming videos. If you're new, you can watch these previous videos. Link is in the description. So let's get started. Okay, we are inside our e-commerce admin panel, and this is the abstract class or the base controller that we created with all the common variables and functions that we need for all of the classes, which we are going to learn today as well. We're going to implement using this class the brand controller, and we are going to see that what is the difference between that. So before implementing the brand controller, we have to implement a relationship between brand and category. So they both have many to many relationship. So first of all, let's quickly have a look what and how we are going to create that many to many relationship in the Firestore. So we have multiple ways to implement this brand categories relationship, but the efficient way or one of the possible ways that I'm using is that we have all the brands inside their own collection. We have list of brands, then we have list of categories over here. So they have document ID. Each document has its own ID. So if we go to the brand category, here we have a relationship between brand and category. So we just have to add the brand ID and the category ID. This is going to create a single relationship between brand and ID, category ID. So same way, now we can create as many collections as we want based on the brand. And once we have that brand, we can fetch all the IDs or the category IDs where the brand ID is 7. So vice versa can be done also. If we're going to find the category ID 2, we have to fetch all the brands of this category ID. So you can search for where category ID is 2, get all the brands. So we will filter out all these documents, and then based on these IDs we will be able to extract the brands or the categories. So as in the design you can see, we are going to fetch all the categories for each specific brand. So this is what we want to implement. So let's get started. So first of all, as you can see in the category controller, we used these four functions. Three functions are override function and one function for the sorting. And we use this base class because at the end we have to extend it with a base controller, which is the category model, and we're going to copy the same category controller. But before doing that, as you can see that this is what we learn while creating the first video of this last section about the backend, and in which we learn that when we are going to fetch the data from database, so we're going to store the data in the database. This is how all classes are going to interact with each other. So first of all, we have the design is going to request towards the controller. After filtering, controller is going to request to the repository to fetch all the cloud operations. It will have a CRUD of the crowd to get data from the Firebase, from the SQL, whatever database you're using. And then based on that data, because Firebase send us the JSON format data, we have to convert that data. So we pass to the model. Model is going to convert that JSON, map it into the model itself, and send back the model copy with all the variables already filled from the JSON, and we will again go back. So first of all, let's try to see how the model is going to look like. Then we are going to create our repository, then controller, and then design. So let's get started. So first of all, for the model, go to the features. In the shop model, you can see we have the brand model over here. So what are the variables we are going to use? We have the ID of the document, name, image, if this brand is featured or not, products count, which is optional in this case because currently so far we are not counting the actual products inside this brand, but you can do that as well. So products count, created and updated at. This means when this document is created and when it is going to be updated last time. Then we have its constructor, but here you can see this is a list which is brand IDs, which is not going to be fetched from the database, and also not we are going to send any data to the database using this variable. And that's why if you see the toJSON function which is going to send data to the database by converting this model data to the JSON format, in that we do not have anything like brand categories. And also when we're going to fetch the data from Firestore, we do not have anything like brand categories again. Same when we're going to fetch the data from a JSON, because this is a document snapshot as you can see, and this is the JSON. Map is actually a JSON. So once this brand model is ready, we have list of brand categories as well. You will see that how we're going to use this variable. Once model is created, let's go to the data in the repositories, go to the brands. You can create your own folder or the package name brands. Then in the brands you have to create the brand repository file, and again to save the time, because we cover each and every concept in previous videos, so I'm just saving the time. So in the brand repository we have the Firebase Firestore instance so that we can access it, and after that we have two functions, get all brands and get all brand categories. Right, remember that we have two collections, one is for the brands, one is for the brand category, in which we have all the relations. So we are simply going to call the database collection of brands dot get all the brands. Same way, get all the brand categories, and we're going to use two models. The first model, which is brand model dot from snapshot function, we're going to pass individual JSON of each document, and we will get the resultant brand model, and again we will create a list and return list from this class. And now if we talk about the second model, brand category, it only contains two things, the document ID and the two values, brand ID and category ID. And again we have two JSON to store that JSON, and from snapshot to convert or extract from the snapshot, get the actual JSON. Once we have the JSON, map it on the brand category model and return that model back over here, and at the end create a list of those models and return that list of brand category model from wherever this is going to be called. So far so good. Once we have that repository, now it's time to create the controller. So go to the shop controller, and in here I'm going to create the brand controller. Also, inside the brand controller, I have created the brand controller dot file, and we name it brand controller. It is extending with the T base controller, same like the category controller. This means it is calling this base class T base controller, and as a T, it is passing the brand model instead of category model. This means that now when this base class will be treated as a brand model or the brand model class. So first of all, let's create two repositories, because inside this base class we have access to all these variables that we need inside our application. We have the onInit method, fetch items, which is a fetch data. We just need to call fetch items. But at the top, you can see we have the error because we need to override three missing functions. So simply override them. So in this tutorial, we are not going to work on delete item. So let's remove this, and rather we're going to use fetch items and contains search query. So I simply created two instances of one instance of the brand repository and one instance of the category controller. So why this category controller? Just a minute. So first of all, in the fetch items, the thing we're going to fetch is the brands. So let's make it async. I'm using the brand repository dot the function that we created in the repository, which is get all brands, and we're going to get a list of, you can see, list of brand models. So once we have the brand models, the second thing we are going to get is list of relationships, which is the brand and categories relationship. Again, use the brand repository and use the second function to load all the relationships of brand and categories. And now the third thing, we need actual categories, because based on this relationship, we need to extract all the data of some specific categories. For that, I'm going to use the category controller, because inside this category controller, it has its own all items. and I'm going to use all items. If they are already fetched and stored inside this all items variable, then I'm not going to call the database again, and we're going to save the extra reads. So if they are empty, this means that no category is yet called. Then only we're going to call the category controller dot fetch items, right? Now what we have to do, we have all these three things. We have the brands, we have categories, and we have relationship of both. So now based on the brands, we have to extract their categories, right? So first of all, we need to know that which brand, because this is a list, so we need to know which brand has which type of categories in it. So we have to find them based on this relationship. So let's create a for loop, fetch brands, because we have to again run a loop on top of brands. And now inside this brands, we have to extract the category IDs. And now based on those category IDs, we will be able to extract the actual categories and store those categories inside the brands, right? So create a list, fetch brand categories, which is this one, which is again a list of brand and categories relationship. So we're going to again call this, we're going to find dot where brand category, because each will have a brand and category. So we have brand category, we have to find the brand ID which is equal to this brand. Remember that again, that we are looking for the categories based on the brand ID. So we will go to the list of brand and categories collection. We will search for the one individual item, and we will say that if this one or the brand ID of this document is equal to the brand ID of this brand, this one single brand in a for loop, then you have to return that. What it is going to return, we do not need the complete model this time, because we only need to get the category ID. So we're going to extract that category ID using map property, and we are going to make a list, return all the category IDs based on this brand ID right over here to this one. Remember, this is a for loop, so we are currently fetching all the category IDs for each brand item. So this is for the first one. Once we have the category IDs. Now, based on these category IDs, we need to extract the actual categories from the categories table, which is over here, dot items of the categories. We want to get those categories and assign those categories back to the brand. So remember, we have brand dot brand categories, which is, let me show you inside the brand model. We have the brand categories, which is a list of category model. This means that each brand has its own list of categories. So we're going to assign the brand categories by finding from the category controller dot all items, because now we know we have all the items in the categories dot which categories we need for this one specific brand, because again remember we are inside a loop. So we're going to talk about one item at a time, one brand at a time. So where from all the categories, it is a function. And now we have to call category IDs dot contains category dot ID, and at the end make it dot to list. So this means go to all the categories and look for one category at a time and see if this category ID is inside the category IDs. If yes, then we need that category, right? We will create a list of that, add all those categories inside the brand categories, and now this brand contains its own brand categories as well. So it is inside the loop. This means all the brands will have their own categories. And once done, we are going to return the fetch brands, because the fetch brands are going to be updated using this brand. So once updated, we are going to return that from the fetch items. I'm going to use again the sort name, which is very similar to this sort, called sort by property, on top of category dot name, and in here we have brand dot name. And again, contain search query is very similar, item dot name dot to lowercase, then query dot to lowercase. Okay, we successfully created our controller and still able to access all these variables. And whenever brand repository, brand controller is going to be created for the first time, on init will trigger, it will assign all the data that we are going to fetch to all items of the brand controller. So once everything is created, now it's time to go to the design screens inside the brand desktop. We first of all have to show the loader as we have done again in the categories. In the brands desktop, create the new instance of brand controller, and once the instance is created, while the data is being fetched using onInit method, instead of displaying this brand table or the whole container, you have to first of all let's wrap it with the OBX, because when the loading stop, we want to display the actual brand table. So let's use it like this. And now we are not going to return the brand table when the loading value is true. When the brand controller dot is loading value is true, we're going to display the loader animation, which is this one. And in the else case, we're going to display the brand table, right? So same way, we are going to copy this from here, go to the mobile section, replace it. Also, once all the instances are copied inside mobile, tablet, or desktop, whichever screen is going to be displayed, it will going to create first instance, and then it is going to start the loader. Once the loader is created, go to the brand table. Again, we need to create the instance of brand controller, and we're going to use this controller. Before doing anything, let's wrap it with the widget of OBX. Okay, so I have simply copied the category design. I have added two texts which are not going to be returned, not going to be displayed, because the table is going to be displayed. But just to update this OBX, I have added filtered items.list, so that whenever there is change in the filtered items, the OBX will be able to redraw the table. Same ways for the selected rows. And this is the thing which is the last table. If in case brand categories are greater than two, this means that if we have more than two brand categories, then in our design, we have to make sure that this is the large table. So in the data row height, we will increase the data row height to 96, and also table height to 96 multiplied by 11.5. This is my settings. You can change them as per your likings. You can also keep the same data row height and table height. So just to make sure, because we have chips inside the brand rows, if I'm going to open this, you can see we're going to display a wrap, and inside the wrap we are displaying all the categories like this is going to definitely take space, and that's why I'm going to decide that we have to have a large or the small table. Now let me modify this to make it dynamic instead of static. First of all, again, we are going to need the controller, which is the brand controller. Get the filtered items at current index. We have a brand, and definitely we have selected and on selected change. To trigger single or multi select, image type will be network, and this is the brand image that we want to display, then brand name. And down below, you can see instead of displaying the static wrap items, let me add a comma, Control Alt L, so that we can easily understand what's going on. If the brand category is not is equal to null, because not most of the cases we have the brand categories. So first of all, if we have the brand categories, we will go to the brand categories and use the map property to return a widget for the children's of wrap, right? So this map is going to return list of children, because at the end we have two lists, and then it is going to have list of widgets as it required by the children. So we're going to return the padding, and this is a design after that. And also you can see we have some space at the bottom. If the device is the mobile screen, then we're going to return 0, means do not add anything at the bottom. Otherwise, add some extra space or extra small size, which is, I guess, 4, as you can see. Then we're going to create a chip text inside it. E.name means category.name. And if there are no brand categories, then we will simply return the size box. Then we have the brand dot is featured. If true, return this icon, else this one. Brand dot created at, we're going to return the formatted date using this helper function inside the brand model, and we're using Intel library tformatter dot format date, which is the Intel library over here to format the date time. After that, we have two action buttons, on edit press and on delete. On edit press, we're not going to send some random brand, but the brand we have over here. And also for deleting the item, we're going to send confirm and delete item. So in the next tutorial, we're going to delete, create, and update those items of the brand. And also at the bottom, you can see we have three overrides. Is row approximate false, row count should be dynamic. So we have filtered items dot length. Selected rows are controller dot selected rows, where selected dot is equal to means selected is true, and get that length. So this is how we want to create the design. Now let's try to run this application. Okay, so our application is running. Let's go to brands. We can see the loader, and now you can see we have the data successfully loaded. This means we have only subcategories of these three brands, and rest of the brands do not have any categories. Let's try to select the rows. This means it's working. We can select and unselect them. Let's try to search something. Okay, so the search is not working. I think we forgot to add or call the search function. So we are going to do that. But let's try to see the sort. We have the ascending sort, and now let's try to change it to descending sort. And this means it's working. Okay, for the search, we have to go to the table header, and inside the table header, we have search on change function. Because this is a function, so we need to get the query as a function, and we're going to call controller dot search query, and we're going to pass that query in that control alt L to align. Now let's try to run it again. Okay, so it's running. Now let's try to search something, and you can see Nike is there. Let's try to search for the Jordan. We have only one thing in the Jordan, so search is also working. This means that everything is working now. In the next tutorial, we're going to delete, edit, and also create new brand. Okay, so that's it for today's tutorial. I hope you learned something new. And if you learned something new, please like the video. And if you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified for all the upcoming videos. If you have any questions, you can ask me down below in the comments. Thank you for watching and take care.